Hi. So, what causes one to play unevenly? If you look at the keyboard of a piano, you'll see that the black and white keys are on different levels. The black keys are on a higher level than the white keys. The white keys are lower. The distance a finger has to travel in order to fully depress a black key is shorter than the distance that same finger has to travel in order to fully depress a white key. That means if you do not adjust the position or the speed of the finger, the black key is going to sound sooner than the white key. The interval of time separating the points at which the actions are instigated from their points of completion varies. So let's say you want to play a passage of 10 semiquavers or 16th notes, if that's what you call them. Bach, by the way, called them 16th notes. And they're Mozart's semiquavers. And that passage comprises black and white notes. Well, you are going to see, and let's call the act of pressing a key the action. Well, when you play those, and there's 10, when you play those 10 notes, you are going to instigate the action at regular intervals in order to play the notes evenly. And depending on which way you look at it, if you do not adjust the speed or the position of the finger, either the black keys are going to sound too early or the white keys are going to sound too late. And that is the cause of unevenness. That is the insight. And what are the implications of that insight? In my introduction video, I said how insight can change the way you see the world. That, it'll become transparent, you'll get X-ray vision. And I hope that explanation was clear, that it makes sense logically, that you could follow it. Because it is, if you just take it for what it is, it's logical that the shorter the distance the finger has to travel, the sooner it arrives at its destination. So let's say you have a problem with unevenness. And in order to correct that problem, your teacher gets you to work with the metronome or gives you finger strengthening exercises. Or you decide for yourself to undertake such activities to eliminate the problem of unevenness. Well, you remember that I said about adjusting either the speed or the position of the finger. Well, those remedies focus solely and exclusively on the speed of the finger. And they completely ignore the other aspect of the position of the finger. And working with the metronome is you'll play while the metronome is ticking, and you coordinate the notes that they coincide with the ticks. And finger strengthening exercises are a similar idea. The whole idea of finger strengthening exercises is so that your fingers have the strength in order to play when you want them to play, which as well is part of the idea of finger independence. Your fingers, when your fingers are independent, they can do what you tell them to do. And so you can see how working with the metronome, what essentially you're adjusting, it's focusing on the speed of the finger to eliminate unevenness, while completely ignoring the other element. And if you ask your teacher, who assigns you to any of these remedies, why are we neglecting? Why are we only focusing on the one element and neglecting the other? Your teacher or professor is going to look at you and go, "What?" And they'll have that look on their face. That's the look of the look of someone in a cage. And they won't know what you're talking about. Because why are they prescribing metronome work or finger strengthening exercises? It's because it's on their shopping list. They do not know the cause of unevenness. And those things are on their shopping list because they believe them. Because it makes them educated. It qualifies them. All those things in reality, no one ever has to lose. And when you ask that question and they go, "What?" and don't know what you're talking about, with that you will have seen in that moment that before you had that insight and were able to ask that question, there was a complete absence of insight in that situation, because in the cage there is no insight. So they don't even realize they're focusing on the speed of the finger in order to correct unevenness. They don't know what they're doing. They just think the metronome is regular, the metronome will fix it. And that's as far as their thinking has gone. And I'm talking about professors, not just some, just a teacher in the middle of nowhere. And when I say the speed of the finger, it could also be the timing of the finger. Because if you are playing the black note, what as well you can do to compensate is you can instigate the action later for every black note than for every white note, and in that way you make up you compensate for the discrepancy between the black and white notes. And so what you're doing with the metronome is you're trying to get your brain on a note by note basis to memorize the varying speeds and adjustments in order to play evenly. And if you'll know that that in those lessons that you're completely ignoring the other aspect, if there is no mention regarding position of the finger in order to eliminate unevenness. And so when your brain is trying to calculate the varying speeds, slowing down the finger for the black notes and speeding up the finger for the white notes, because that is what it has to do. That is the physics. Or it's adjusting the point of instigation. A little bit sooner for the black notes, a little bit later for the white notes. Not only does it have to do it at all, when you play at a different tempo, those speeds that you've been making your brain memorize or calculate at the slow tempo are no longer relevant, because with the quicker tempo, new speeds, the new adjustments need to be made. So, and the only thing separating you from unevenness is your brain controlling the speed or the timing of the point of instigation. So the unevenness is not gone, it's there, and it just stays there and it waits, and as soon as your brain fails, it's in. And then your brain can't record, it has to deal with the unevenness that was just waiting right there. And not only do you have to do that in a piece and for every tempo, but every new piece is the exact same ordeal. You need to memorize the timing, the speed of the finger to play this piece. And it doesn't matter that you did it all for the last piece. This new piece, the unevenness is still there because, like I said in the last video, the hidden enemy can't be beaten. So you never get rid of it. It's always there, and you'll always have that fear for as long as you play the piano of that unevenness slipping in, because it's right there with you constantly. And we were talking about how many notes, not just the notes in the right hand, but the notes in the left hand. You're talking about hundreds of notes. Your brain has to, a sequence you're trying to drill into your brain with the metronome. And then it's learning it with the metronome, but you're meant to perform it without the metronome. So your brain is meant to remember the metronome and coordinate those notes to something that isn't there anymore. And so with this finger, I'm going to point to the tip of my other finger. This here is the point of instigation when my finger is flat. And this here is the point of instigation when my finger is curved. And what do you notice? The curved finger lowers the point of instigation. So, what I am providing you is a way to eliminate tension by adjusting the position of the finger rather than the speed of the finger. So instead of calculating, your brain having to calculate, should my finger move, half speed, or 0.457 times faster than it did in the last note, your brain has to think of two different positions. And that's it. And you can as well imagine that tempo, when you adjust the distance in order to eliminate unevenness, it doesn't matter what your what speed your finger is traveling, because they all travel at the same speed. So when the distance is the same, they arrive, their time of arrival at their destination is as well the same. So it doesn't matter what tempo you play anymore, because you have adjusted the position in order to eliminate unevenness. And we're in comparing the one and the other, catering for the position of the finger is foolproof. This one is for the less talented people, because when according to society standards, if you play unevenly, you are less talented than a person who plays evenly. So if you're having trouble with unevenness, you belong to the less talented crowd. And my version is for the less talented crowd, because it's foolproof. Whereas the other one, on a note by note basis, to be adjusting in your brain, mentally, adjusting the velocity of the finger in order to cater for the different level of black and white key. It's ludicrous. It's a fool's errand. You're demanding superhuman feats to achieve to achieve the same result. And so with insight, you can see how absurd this version is when this version exists. You can see how absurd it is to focus solely and exclusively on the speed of the finger when one can correct the problem just as effectively and infinitely more economically through the position of the finger. That's how the insight. When you ask your teacher, why are we ignoring the one and focusing exclusively on the other? And you see the look on their face, that the look of a person in the cage, not knowing what you're talking about. You are seeing through your teacher in that moment. You are getting a glimpse of what it's like to have insight and to see the world. And your teacher won't, or a professor, because I don't want it to sound like we're talking about low down people. I mean, we're talking about people in university level who, there is no insight in the cage and they're all in a cage. They will have told you about, again, from their shopping list, from what they believe, they'll tell you the hand position you should have. And they all sound like, as Chopin called them, ingenious theories. They'll tell you about pretending you're holding a tennis ball, or imagining that a drop of water dropping from your tip of the finger, that's where you're meant to press the key, or they'd have you feel that area there and how strong it is and solid, and that you have to keep this as a ridge, constantly firm. All nonsense like that. And they won't have told you at all in your problem with unevenness and in your attempts to eliminate that unevenness, they won't have said you have to cater, you have to adjust the position of the finger for the black and white key. And you can see, hopefully, the logic in what I say and realize, Alan, you're right. It is absurd. And I now have I have exposed the enemy. And the enemy, when you're adjusting the position of the finger, the enemy is gone. It doesn't get a look in. You will never play unevenly again for the rest of your life. And you don't have to fear the enemy because you know what the enemy is. You know how to keep them out. That position, that fail-safe method excludes the enemy. They don't have any gaps. They don't have to wait. They don't get to wait there, almost beside your fingers, under your fingers, just wait until your brain misses a note that it can slip in. It's gone. It's out of the picture. I have eliminated the unevenness in your playing, and I've done it right away. And the metronome work, finger strengthening exercises, finger independence, it's all gone. It's all unnecessary. And I'll ask you to think about, I'll provide you with more implications of that insight, but the insight is far reaching. It's a guiding light. It'll guide you through into possibility. So you might think about what other implications are there. But according to society, when you've done the metronome work, the finger strengthening exercises, and if ignored the finger position in your lessons, and the evenness always comes back, and you might have some degree of success where it feels, but it'll always be shaky. It's like Chopin said about learning to walk on your hands instead of on your feet. You don't know how to walk on your feet, but you'll never walk on your hands as well. So you'll always be shaky and scared of unevenness slipping in. And what is it then, according to society? In reality, you do not have the talent that somebody who plays evenly has. And your teacher will look at you and feel sorry for you. But in the goodness of their heart, in their benevolence, they'll continue to give you lessons and take your money. And continue to dish out those items on their shopping list. Sending you on a fool's errand. As someone less talented, you should be doing something easier than the genius. Not trying to achieve the impossible or do something that only a super brain can achieve. But that is what the teachers and professors, in their ignorance, in their lack of insight, are having you do. And you might assign that to yourself, and it's almost abusive. And to decide for yourself to work with the metronome or do all these finger strengthening exercises is like a form of self-abuse, and it's a terrible thing. You're wasting your time, your years. You're destroying your love of the piano and of music, because you're not encountering the problems of good music there. You are encountering, this is a living example of what Chopin called acrobatics. And that's what you're spending your time on, and you can see the task, the mammoth task demanded of your brain, that it does not get the chance to do anything else. And you can see how phenomenal the brain is that it'll try. And you'll get some degree of success, even though, and it doesn't say, hold on, calm down. You're demanding too much of me. It doesn't need to be that difficult. It doesn't do that. It tries to do it. So when you can play evenly after I'm finished with you, What does that say about talent? You can see here, with that insight, that talent plays no role in the issue of even or uneven playing. It doesn't exist. And I tell you here that talent does not exist. It's an illusion, it's a myth. And the level of naivety in believing an idea of talent equals that, when before the Reformation, when they sold indulgences to reduce time in purgatory. We hear about now and we think, the people were pretty gullible back then. But we believe in talent. We believe in this stuff that's sprinkled on people like pixie dust. Some people get it sprinkled on them, others don't. And everything is a question of talent. Even though you're paying professionals to help you with unevenness, and they resort to the idea of talent in order to answer the question. Dish out items on their shopping list, have zero insight, and you are trapped with them in the cage. And they ensure that you never escape the cage. And you can see how useful talent is as a means of oppression. It keeps everybody in their place. You can't complain. You can't complain that there's pianists out there that are better than you, because you have no control over talent. But now with that insight, you can see where the problem lies. The problem lies in your professor or teacher or yourself not knowing what the cause of unevenness was, and not realizing you're focusing on the transient, you're grabbing a thin air. The speed or the timing, there's nothing to grab onto. There's no fixed points. It's all in the air, and you're trying to grab at that constantly, and it's your inability to grab a thin air that is all unevenness needs to pounce. Whereas if you deal with the position of the finger, you're dealing in concrete, in fixed points. You have something to actually grab onto. You have nothing to grab onto with the other thing. And if that insight now eliminates the question of talent when it comes to playing evenly or unevenly, do you not think the other insights that I have to share are going to eliminate other aspects that are believed to boil down to talent? So when you explore those things I've shared in the other videos, and you now eliminate unevenness in your playing, you are rising in stature, you are getting stronger, you are leaving that place that talent has decided you are meant to be, and you're rising above it. And you now, in your lesson, your teacher is down here, and you can think, just like Jesus taught, forgive them, for they know not what they do, because they don't know about what exists, what causes unevenness. They don't know that they're neglecting the one element and focusing entirely on the other. They don't know how foolish it is to focus on this element. And so you're looking at them. You were here before you had this insight. And now you're here and you're seeing them there. You're seeing them in the cage, not knowing, that look on their face like, what? What? You know, that's the look of somebody in the cage. And that's what I said about empowering you and how you will become formidable, because you are in the process of becoming formidable. So please like and subscribe if you want to continue gaining insight. Because in the cage there is no insight. It doesn't exist. Whereas I, as a pupil of possibility, I'm dealing only in insight, and it's very rare. It's very rare you get insight after insight, but I can provide insight after insight. And you will see, like here with Unevenness, how logic is all on my side. Ask your teacher to defend metronome work. Ask them. I've defended finger position. Ask them to defend metronome work, to defend finger strengthening exercises, and then hit them with the what about the other aspect, and you'll totally blindside them. So in my next video, I'm going to talk a bit about speed of the finger and share some insight into that. So please subscribe and press that notification bell, and you won't miss it. Thanks.